Welcome to the DriveLife Podcast. With us today, we've got Sean, Mark, and Mark. Mark's from Redline Magazine. We'll give you a bit more of a formal introduction in just a bit. But we're doing video. This is unusual for us, so you have to bear with, but we're in the wonderful surroundings of the Motorist again. We're in their Le Mans room this time, and it's fantastic. And
lovely room.
It is. They're officially sponsoring the podcast, and there'll be a little bit more about them later on. For now, we've had quite a busy month since the last recording, and we've got quite a bit coming up. I think this time we want to talk about Northumberland first, which was a recent drive that we did with the club, SUK.
Yeah, it's so May to September is always the busiest time for wearing our SCUK hat, so to speak, and running the car events on the car club side of stuff. So yeah, we did. We've just come off the back of our second Northumberland tour of the year, which, as I've probably mentioned on previous podcasts, is definitely one of my favourites. It's quite a special route that was picked out by Mike, our ambassador, who was on the previous podcast talking about his sort of route finding history. But yeah, it went very well. Other than this year has been quite a tough one for weather challenges all round. Loads of tours have been very testing weather-wise compared to previous years. So this year in May it was thick fog for the entire morning's drive, which just was challenging. Curbed your speed significantly. We were crawling along at 20 miles an hour going over Stanhope and a few of those places. But this time round it was 50 to 60% of the whole trip was rain.
Well, it was in Storm Anthony, wasn't it?
Yes.
So that was,
Yeah.
I had visions of getting a call like Mark's been swept off the Holy Island Causeway. There's members underwater, whatever, but I did keep an eye on the weather forecast for you, and it seemed like it was going to be wet, but not outrageously wet. So
yeah, I'd say for the most part it wasn't torrential. It was just conditions that you had to be pretty careful in when it comes to driving in a group. I think we got lucky with the Holy Island element because the weather actually held for us there.
Yeah.
So we
dropped on really well with that.
Yeah, because it's the
just before we'd had a big downpour. It's almost Quattro season, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And the amount of those rear-wheel drive cars that are really, really quick, just suddenly slowing down.
Yeah,
Music to my ears. I couldn't keep up for Shane.
I know I couldn't keep the pace on you at the end. It was swift, but it went well. All in all, what did we have? 17 cars total.
Yeah, that's good.
Started in from Scotch Corner as usual, ended in Berwick-on-Tweed, isn't it?
Yes.
Berwick-on-Tweed. Nice, great hotel there. We thank you to them for hosting us again because it's our fourth visit there, and they're a great venue. Then over to Holy Island, and then everybody the majority came with us right to the end point, which was Bowes Museum near Barnard Castle.
Yeah.
But yeah, really good 2 days, and well, firstly thank you to the members who attended, but also thank you to the members who stuck for the entire trip, did the whole drive with us, because I realised that when you're going away doing a driving tour, having bad weather isn't really the ideal scenario. So we definitely understand if people cut their trip short because it kind of isn't what it's about really when there's bad weather.
Great atmosphere though.
Obviously
quite a few new faces, which is always good to see as well. Generally, feedback certainly I saw and witnessed, it was really positive. People generally were surprised about how much they enjoyed it. Obviously, quite some people turn up on their own, never been on a car trip at all themselves. And kind of meeting a complete bunch of strangers and going for a drive. And they really enjoyed it, and quite a few of them, learned a little bit more about the cars as well in the process, which is always good.
what was the mix of cars like this time round? Was there?
It was a good again, typically as we've seen in a club, we're a mixture of sports and supercars, so we had a really good mixture across the board, right from sort of top end Ferraris to to M Series Beamers, and everything else in between.
Yeah,
really good mixture, really good.
Yeah, I mean on the one we did earlier in the year, there was a BAC mono joined us.
Okay.
You know, that is, I think, the most extreme car that we've had on one of our drive outs. And the Northumberland roads were particularly unkind to us. We mentioned the fog, but they were also quite broken up, and there was loads of gravel and just things around. It sounds like all that's been washed away now, but yeah, it's always good to be amongst a mix of cars, not just, you know, it's not a one mark club. It's not all supercars. It's not, you know, it's a good mix. So that's sort of representative on the drive, which is good.
I think it was quite handy because we ran this one in two groups. So I was leading up the second group, and Mark was pretty much on it on that second day. And gave me this phone call. He says, all I know is that about a couple of miles before you get to the A1, there's some giant potholes that you could lose cars in there. So literally for 10 minutes, I'm warning people about these potholes. I said, they're coming up soon. They're coming up soon.
Yeah, well, it was
Exactly that.
better than the alternative because we were suddenly swerving all over the place, and the car behind me went straight through the big one, and he was like, "Oh, I hope that didn't sound good."
Worst sound in the world.
Yeah,
because it doesn't make a sound, and you just expensive.
Yeah, I think not a pothole as such, but I think there was so much of the road was missing that basically the whole bottom of the car touched the road. On
The road was missing.
Basically a pothole the full width of the road. We took a slightly wrong turn at one part. I think 3 or 4 cars missed. We should have gone left and we went right, and the road basically was like it had been bombed. It was awful. And yeah, that was you know, you could feel all the undercar aero being worn away. And I know that at least on the May trip, there was a 430 with us, and he put the car into Ferrari afterwards, and they sent him a video of the underneath of the car, which had some quite significant underbody erosion.
They didn't have anything good to say, did they? I watched the video.
Repeat what was said on the video by the mechanic, but it wasn't good.
It wasn't a standard feature.
It's not supposed to be. Basically, everything, and that was because of these enormous potholes. So yeah, it's one advantage is when you've got a convoy and you've got the radio, you can radio ahead. But if you're off the route and you've got no one to follow, and the road just ends and it's a crater, then what do you do? So yeah.
And just to pick a point up, you said about groups. I think just one thing to mention to members, particularly new members who are thinking of coming on our tours, is that I think a lot of the time people are maybe apprehensive or surprised or concerned about what the pace might be, whether, because we're a mixed sports and supercar club, whether their, let's say, M series BMW is capable enough to join a tour with a, Ferrari F8, for example. And just to sort of reassure members who are looking to join tours like this is that we are, everything is organised around the idea that we are a mixed sports and supercar club with different drivers, different pace expectations and different driving ability. And so we always run all tours in multiple groups. The groups are predominantly there to allow those who want to just drive at their own pace, and take it steady, that they feel included in the trip, and they have a group leader. Equally, those who want to push on, there's also a group that's more sort of towards that end of things. So if you are looking to come on a tour and you are concerned that you're nervous about the pace or sticking together or whatever it might be, don't worry. I think we feel like we do have that in hand, and we'll always make sure that everybody makes it to the end point and they feel like they've had a really enjoyable drive for that day.
And that goes for passengers as well. I think some people are nervous about bringing wives, partners along, friends even, who aren't confident passengers, that for whatever reason, or get car sick and that kind of thing. And I think sometimes people think that they've come along to a drive and it's been quite a spirited drive, and they think, well, if my wife had been here, we wouldn't have been able to enjoy it. And then they've come along with their wives, and actually they have driven at a slower pace, but actually found they've enjoyed it just the same because they've maybe dropped into a slower group, and actually found that the enjoyment is very, very similar. I think that works really well across all of the drives that we do. And also, if you do have a concern either before or during a drive, come to us. There's loads of ambassadors on these drives. We're all really open and responsive to any sort of needs that people have. So
DriveLife branded sick bags coming to us.
DriveLife branded sick bags. Yes.
Well, that's a good idea. We'll add it to the range. So yeah, that was Northumberland. Yeah, it went well. Look forward to doing it again next year for sure. 100%.
Yeah, it is absolutely becoming. I've done it twice. I think I did the first ever one.
Yep.
From this year. It's one of my favourite drives of the calendar. It's really good. The scenery is so mixed. You've got a bit of everything pace wise as well. We can't control the weather, but it's pretty good. Pretty good scenery. And it's just somewhere that, particularly, I live further away than the sort of core of the members generally. And it's good to get somewhere that's outside even where the sort of core membership. It's not sort of home turf for anyone that goes on most of these drives as well. So it is a bit different, and everyone's in that same boat rather than I drove this last week on my way home from work or whatever. It's a totally different world almost. So,
yeah, absolutely. And as Mike alluded to in previous podcasts, particularly with that route, we do take a few roads that are very sort of off the beaten track, not quality wise, but they're roads you wouldn't necessarily find yourself on, and they are 100% hidden gems and really produce an incredible day of driving. So
yeah,
I really enjoy that trip a lot.
Yeah. So similar northerliness, but there's also southwest coast. So that's the other side, isn't it? And up.
Yes.
So
it is. Yeah. So Dumfries area. One of my favourites too. We did it for the first time last year, didn't we? We'd recce'd that one, so we knew what was to come for the most part. And considering that, so NC 500 is obviously the popular one. Everybody knows about that. It's an absolutely fantastic trip anyways, NC 500. But to take sort of the feel of NC 500, but go somewhere that's even less used than the NC 500 is great. Like the quality of the roads and the route for the entire 2 days. It's a 2-night trip rather than a 1 night. It's like Northumberland. 2-night trip and
3 days driving.
So 3 days driving, 2 nights, and I enjoyed every bit of it last year. Really incredible.
I think as well as the group's generally a larger group than we normally run on a single tour, because we split into 3 groups, and you're spending that little bit extra time, that extra night or extra day that you're spending with that group is you really feel that group coming together really as a better. I think it's a really good sociable event, that one. That's what I enjoyed. That's how it was last year anyway.
Yeah, I'd say that we're probably one of the only sports and supercar clubs that I know of that does quite regular, like 1-night events. And I really enjoy the 1-nighters because they give people who live further away more of an opportunity to join us on a drive, because there's a lot of our events are just morning drives, and it doesn't make sense to drive 3 hours just to then have a 2-hour morning drive and drive back home again. But like what you're saying, you only get a very limited time to meet the members, socialise with them, spend some time on the 1-nighters, and the 2-night one in SWC was just the right length to get to know everyone a bit better. And again, like all of our tours, it's fantastic to meet new members. Everyone's very like-minded, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it again this year.
So when is that?
That is the 31st of August to the 2nd of September. As of now, we've got 1 space. I doubt that will be the case by the time this goes out, but still, nonetheless, we have 1 space. So keep an eye out, or join the reserve list, because you never know, somebody might drop out. And I really recommend it if you're looking for a last trip of the year before we all have to inevitably put our cars away or endure months of freezing cold weather. Then
Or salt.
Salt
for some people is a concern, isn't it?
Then jump onto SWC.
Yeah.
Well, we've not had much of a summer, so you may as well carry on, to be honest.
Yeah, you're completely right.
Yeah. I've got a feeling that it's going to be, is it an Indian summer? Is that the right term for it? Where you get a really late summer. Hopefully, anyway, because we've had a miserable July.
Yeah. The
wettest July on record, isn't it? By the way, awful. So,
yeah,
hopefully we get good weather.
Really tough weather this year. Yeah, fingers crossed.
We love to mourn about the weather.
Yeah, well, it's part and parcel of being British, isn't it? Just the way it is. But I think you've got to be able to make the best of it, whatever the weather. And I think we try our best to do that, don't we? Certainly have fun in the rain where applicable. But it is better when it's dry, let's be honest.
I think that when we're running these trips, I think a lot of the time we maybe focus in a little bit too much. I get too concerned that the entire experience is just about the driving. And you can often forget, like you were just mentioning, staying 2 nights with the group, is that it's as much about the social element as it is the driving, and so the weather doesn't really have an impact on that. We can still have a great time regardless, but it is nice when it's sunny, nonetheless.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
What else have we got coming up?
So then after that we'll have the main feature event in the calendar will be Cotswolds tour. So this is a bit of a different tour because it's we pitch it as a venue tour. Anyone who's driven around the Cotswolds tried to do, let's say, a spirited route in the Cotswolds. It's almost impossible to do. It's just so busy, and
there's so much traffic.
Stringing nice roads together in a route that makes sense from a pace perspective can be tough. So there are a lot of great car orientated venues kind of in the region.
Yeah.
So we do it's going to be a one night venue tour. So we'll start at Caffeine and Machine. We'll then have a short drive to the airfield. I forget the airfield's name, but it's the one that's got the Vulcan bomber on site.
Well, we will do, assuming there's no incidents with the aircraft.
No incidents, yeah. It's so unlucky beyond belief last year. So for anyone who's listening and doesn't know, we had this trip planned last year, and about 2 hours before the photo shoot, we had a phone call from the venue to say that they were doing some demo runs with the aircraft on the runway. And
it's the Vulcan bomber.
On the Vulcan bomber, yeah. Just a couple of hours before we were due to arrive, and braking issue or something happened, and the aircraft went off the end of the runway, through the hedges, and was sticking out into the road. And so we got a bit of an SOS phone call saying, "Do not attend." That is not.
It closed the road.
Yeah, it closed the road. Yeah,
It made the news. Everything. It was
yeah.
an unusual thing to see on the.
I mean, I don't know how long the bomber's been been there for many, many years. It's just on the day we decided to visit.
Yeah, unbelievable. It was a fast taxi experience. I think they do to raise money for charity or something. They sell. You can sit in the cockpit while they blast it up and down the runway because you can't fly. Okay. So, yeah, it was something like that, and they just forgot to stop it, or there's some sort of unfortunate.
They got 30% extra free.
Yeah.
They certainly won't forget that experience.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, and the bill that came with it, I believe,
Yeah.
from what I understand. So I'm sure a new engine or something had to be replaced.
Yeah, they did quite a lot of damage to undercarriage and stuff as well. I think it was
dragging it out.
Not good. Not good at all. Yeah, I remember I was on that last year and just sitting at Caffeine and Machine, desperately trying to replan around the fact that they'd managed to crash a static aircraft.
Yeah.
That was good fun. But coming back to the point about venues, what the Cotswolds lacks in, kind of ability to do a high performance route is made up by the quality, the average quality of all of the venues, because it's definitely the strongest region of the UK that I've been to for kind of car oriented sort of petrol head themed venues, because you've got Caffeine and Machine, obviously the one everybody knows, but you've also got the Cotswold Barn, there's the place we stay. These are all kind of really good
Classic Motorist as well.
The Classic Motor, there's loads of
and Diddley Squat as
and
well.
obviously, yeah.
So that'd be a feature of the afternoon after the photo shoot, is that's where we'll be heading. And hopefully he's got his car park.
Parking since our last episode there.
They've managed to convince the council that it's in their sort of economic interest to do that. So, whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So it's a shame that the roads don't match the quality of the venues, but it is what it is, really.
Sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one as a bit of a different take on our usual style of tour. It's nice to do kind of the venue one. There's a bit more stop starting and hanging around, drinks and all that, but it's just a different type of tour, and I enjoyed it last year a lot, so looking forward to it again this year.
Excellent.
And then after that, it will be, things will start to quieten down for the off season.
Yeah.
We'll still do static events. We've got plenty still to add to the calendar.
Yep.
We've also got a Christmas event at the Motorist that's going to get...
Talk about Christmas.
We've got two.
Summer.
It's
We've
too
got
early.
two, unfortunately.
I actually saw Christmas decks out in a supermarket the other day. I kid you not. I saw them, and I went into a Home Sense, and it had like nutcrackers on the, and I was like, this is too early.
August.
I can't be dealing with this.
So I my partner and I run a business, and we stock homeware type things. We make and sell homeware type things, and our retailers are asking us already for, you know, what lines are available for Christmas, when we'll be able to stock them. We're under immense pressure to sort of get stuff in now, you know, on display for their customers. There must be a customer demand for it, but I don't understand why people are Christmas shopping in August, but it's apparently a thing.
Make a note, next podcast, Christmas hats.
Christmas hats for the next podcast, yeah.
Yeah.
Be a bit late, we'll miss the boat, it'll be September.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Ones.
Yeah, DriveLife Christmas hats, there we go, yeah. Okay.
That is an idea that you have to follow through with now.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Consider it done.
Yeah. Wicked. Maybe not for the September podcast, but maybe
For the September podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fine.
You're on video now, so you got to.
Yeah. I suppose we've somehow
The viewers
accidentally
have seen
committed
and
to
heard
that.
this. There you go, Christmas hats in September.
I need to shut up.
Yeah. Stitched.
Yeah.
Right.
Cheers, Sean.
Last time I get invited back on here.
Looking for your next car event, car club, or automotive venue? Find it with Car Calendar. Discover hundreds of upcoming events, car clubs, and car venues on the UK's biggest car events platform. Search by location and radius, favourite your events, buy event tickets with ease, and follow your favourite clubs and venues to be the first to hear about their upcoming events. For event organisers, you can list events, clubs and venues free of charge, sell tickets directly in the app, and track performance of your event all in one place. Available online and in your app store, just search Car Calendar.
So let's talk about Redline. As you're never coming back. So
Yeah.
no.
Plug as much as I can now.
Yeah.
Because,
So you'll have seen the announcement. Certainly, there's stuff already out on social media, and that's we've announced that SUK has partnered with Redline Magazine. So it's a quarterly publication,
Yep.
right? It's got a few here. I'm just going to flick through this idly in the background. I mean, the idea of partnering with a car magazine is a fantastic one. So I'm going to start with the SUK team. Like, how did you?
But what I would say, what a magazine as well.
What a magazine, yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
So where's this come from? Basically, what's the driving force behind? No pun intended there. Driving force behind getting a magazine like Redline on board.
Well, I think if I remember correctly, I think, Mark, you gave me a ring, didn't you? Out of the blue, just to have a chat about potentially your publication having a supercar club partner and the content that could come off the back of that. And I think that it has been probably part of our conversation as the club owners for a while as to it would be great to have some kind of publication that we were involved in, or at minimum be able to start putting out more forms of varied content, whether that's video, magazine, whatever it might be, that directly involves our members and their cars. Because I think one thing that I've certainly felt since running this, or being involved in this club, is it's great to see the story behind people's cars, that people and their cars, and also the story of how they've progressed through their car history, and they've gone from, through the models. And it's been personally great to see members who have joined us in, I guess, a car that falls into let's say the sports car bracket, and then all of a sudden they've managed to progress their way all the way through up into the supercar bracket. And it's nice to see that journey and the story. Yeah, just like yourself. It's nice to see that story. So finding ways to cover that in content is certainly a great thing from our perspective. And this, I think, just came along just at the right time. So thank you for picking up the phone.
It's funny. No, it's a pleasure. It's funny how sometimes the right thing happens at the right time and it sort of falls into place.
Absolutely. I just want to say quickly that idea, the idea of being more connected with the people who interact with SUK, DriveLife, etc., Car Calendar, is the reason this podcast started. It was to have exactly those conversations with people about what we do as a car club, but also the stories of how people have got into their cars and why. And certainly, putting it in print is just as good or maybe sometimes even better medium than a podcast. So
I think genuinely as well is that a lot of people have very similar stories, but it also inspires other people with a passion to say that, some of these things actually are achievable if you set your mind to it.
1,000,000%. I think that the motivation behind me contacting you guys was, you've seen the magazine and we've got some really awesome features in there. And for the audience members who don't know, we get access to press vehicles. The manufacturers send us the cars. We get to review them. We've got motorsport content in there as well. But what I really wanted to do was try and sort of build this sense of community into the magazine as well, because it's not just about cars, it's about people.
Yeah.
And so it made sense for us to have a supercar club as a partner. And it gives us an opportunity to diversify the content a little bit so we can get a bit more personal with people's journeys in terms of, like you say, as an example, they bought a sports car and they've progressed to a supercar and this is their motoring journey, so to speak. Yeah. It gives us the opportunity to talk about tours and events and things like that. And it just adds another side of content to the magazine that we don't have at the moment. And we just wanted to introduce new people, create stories. And I think this idea that you can have your car, whether it be a big feature or you see it because your car's been at an event that we've covered, to go, oh, my car's in a car magazine, is a really cool thing.
100% it is, yeah.
Love it.
And people will have the copy of the magazine and they'll keep it for a very long time. And they'll go, hopefully in 20 years, go, was the time.
Keep it. It'll be framed. It'll be on walls.
I hope they frame it. That'd be great.
So how did, what's the story of Redline? How did it get started?
So there's a long story and a short story. We haven't got all day, so I'll give you the short one. But I was doing a little bit, I was between jobs at the time. I kept getting sacked from jobs because I wasn't very good at working for other people. And I was doing between jobs a little bit of writing for a local car magazine. And I used the term car magazine loosely because it was a bit of an advertising cash cow with some motoring content in there. They weren't doing road tests or anything like that. And the feedback that I got was that my written content was really good. So I sort of looked at the business model. I had a bit of money in the bank. I didn't really want to go back and work for somebody else. So as a bit of a punt, I was just like, I'm going to do this. And started a car mag, as you do, randomly. And it just sort of went from there. We started publishing content and bit by bit, it just grew as we got more readers and, we worked on our branding and our social presence and things like that. Eventually, I was approaching car manufacturers and they were sending us cars for reviews and, we were getting good support in terms of sponsorship and things like that. And then, just bit by bit, it grew. And now we've got this, nice high quality car magazine that's stocked in WH Smith High Street and Travel. People can buy it from our website as well. We get to go and do some really crazy things with some really crazy cars. And if you asked a 10-year-old me what I'd be doing in my 30s, I probably would have laughed at you, to be honest. It's a bit of a dream, to be honest. So.
Yeah. What's the hardest thing about starting this magazine? What's the on the journey to, you sat there, you thought, I'm going to start a magazine. What's been the most difficult thing that you've had to overcome? Because I can't imagine, there's probably 100 problems that you've had along the way, but is there one that stands out?
The whole thing really is a massive challenge. I think there's so many different challenges associated with doing it. It's really difficult to pick out one particular thing. But I think the main thing that stands in my mind at the moment, and I think anybody with a business would be able to appreciate this, is the amount of rejection that you have to go through in order to actually, get to a point where people are receptive to it and you get your product out there and it starts getting a name for itself. Whether that's selling advertising space to businesses in the magazine, and people turning around and saying, no, we don't want to do it. Or, approaching car manufacturers and then, more so in the early days than now, saying, no, we don't want to feature our cars in there. It's just about kind of dealing with right, I've been told no and it doesn't feel very nice, but I've got to crack on with it. Yeah. I think that's always the most difficult bit.
Right.
And then everything else around that is just creating content, which is what I love doing. which I love doing. So that was never a hardship. But yeah, certainly the business aspect is always the most challenging bit.
Right. I mean, I don't want to sort of get into the realms of comparing this magazine with any other magazine, but interesting that
No, all the other ones are rubbish.
All
so,
the other ones are rubbish, yeah.
I'm joking. There's some great mags out there. I love them.
I watched I think it was about an hour's worth of content that Harry Metcalf put out on the story of Evo and how they got started, and he, misappropriated some funds from his farming business to basically, and it was stuck in my mind that, they spent I don't know, a week deliberating over what paper to use and things like that.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it was easier back then than it is now to launch something like this in the face of YouTube. Because is your on-shelf competition worse or better because there's less of it compared to
it's
back
a
when
tough
Evo
one.
launched, for example?
It's a tough one. 20 years ago, 20 odd years ago when Evo launched, and I love Evo, by the way. I grew up reading Evo. The journalists that were working on Evo at the time, they're heroes. And a lot of that has been a big inspiration for me and, what I do with Redline. But I never wanted to start a car magazine that's like Evo. I didn't want any competitors. And I think the way that I position the magazine's different. But to get back to your question, is it harder? Is it easier? I definitely think it's harder now because 20 years ago, the internet wasn't as prevalent as it is now. Mm-hmm. And people went, to the shop to buy their reading material, and that was their entertainment, the TV and the radio.
Yeah.
So whereas now we've got all these other really great platforms that people can get information from at the click of a button. But the thing that I was very conscious of, when I started the business was we can't be putting out a flimsy consumer product because that will, in this day and age, that won't sell. You've got to put out a premium product that's based around entertainment, and then people will buy it. And that's the ethos. And bit by bit, over the years, we've made it more premium, a higher quality. The photography's gotten better, the written content's gotten better, and we've managed to grow into this space where we do offer that product now. So yeah, I think if you want to sell magazines today, you have to have something that people want to read, not need to read. I think that's the main difference behind it.
Yeah. I mean, just flicking through here, and I promise I've done absolutely no preparation for this, good or bad. I've just landed on an article here called End of the Road, right? So if you've got, this is issue 15, the magazine, you can read it. But I'm at least 90% sure that I've watched this as a YouTube video. Was it by Steve Sutcliffe? Because the article was written by Steve Sutcliffe. Was it him that did the YouTube video of this? And that's kind of a really interesting thing. It's like there's a magazine here that's selling the same thing that there's free content for on YouTube, and that must be such a hard sell in this day and age. So like, how do you convince people that this is the way to consume this content? I mean,
that's a really good question. We don't try and convince anybody.
Okay, you just let them come to.
We let them, however they pick up a magazine, whether they buy it or, we've had people see them in shops or hotels or, where we've done some distribution in other places before or at shows and events. However they pick it up, we want the product to do the talking. And that's really, in a digital age, it is more difficult to try and push a print product. And that's really why you've got to have something like this speaking for itself, especially when you're not 20 years old. You're not a 20 or 30-year-old motoring publication. We're much newer than that. And it's about branding, and it's about getting our hands on the exciting cars, because that's really what sort of attracts people to it. And also, if we are advertising to people, we want to make sure that, we're targeting our audience and our demographics. But there isn't really a big sell, this is the medium that you have to, because people will read magazines, they'll watch YouTube, they'll listen to podcasts, they'll consume all types of motoring content across all platforms.
The other thing I would say as well is that in kind of the digital age, sometimes it's actually nice to have something physical and tangible.
Definitely.
And I think what the important part when you do that is to ensure that the look and feel and the quality of it is where it needs to be. And one thing I think that stands out about this magazine versus most stuff you see on the shelf is even the matte finish and the entire feel of the publication is really high quality.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I think that definitely makes a difference. With anything, even if something free comes through your door, you keep it or you pay attention to it if the quality is high. Yeah. And I think it's definitely the magazine is sat really well in that kind of area.
I would agree.
I think it's fair to say as well, because I think people, I've subscribed to magazines in previous lives, and I think when the physical magazine, still it feels the quality, but you read it and digest information. I think more when it's a physical item, when it's something that's online, you kind of just scroll through it like you scroll through a web page.
Yeah, it's more disposable.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, on that point, I've received emails from people, and they've got multiple issues of the magazine, and they're stacked up on the coffee tables at home. And I had a really nice email recently from somebody, basically saying, the content's great. Me and my son, we do rereads of the magazine, and they're on the coffee table, and it was really touching to actually hear that somebody, a father-son, are bonding over copies of Redline. That for me was like, well, if I never do another good thing with this magazine, at least I've done that, and so people do pick these things up and they do keep them. And again, it just gets back to making sure that we're releasing quality and, not a flimsy thing that you would, happily chuck in the bin once you're done with it. So
I think for me, one of the biggest things about a magazine, I find this frustrating across all, no matter what the genre is. Reading is something that you can do at your own pace, whereas YouTube videos are paced for you by whoever's narrating them.
Yeah.
And so, I can read an article like this in 5 minutes, or I can spend 30 minutes sort of absorbing the detail. It's up to me as the reader to do that. You can't do that with a YouTube video. It's sort of rammed down your throat or through your eyeballs at whatever the rate that the content creators decided to do that. And the other thing is there's very few YouTube content creators out there who are producing image quality, anything like print media, still images. Yeah. So there's Henry Catchpole is probably the number one for me for just the cinematic vision that he has for the video content he puts out, regardless of which platform he's putting it out on. But, I think start a flame war in the comments, but like Autocar is terrible. There's the two extreme ends of the spectrum in terms of quality. But when for
other brands are available.
There's plenty of terrible YouTube automotive channels out there for comparison. But the quality for a still image to make it into a magazine, the bar is still stratospherically high.
Massively, yeah.
Because you can't just self-publish stuff to YouTube like of any old rope. Whereas this is, the images in here are absolutely stunning. And it's not just the image; it's how it's presented. Yeah. And also, I don't know, for the photographers out there, if you take a photo and you look at it on a screen, it's one thing, but as soon as you print it out, it takes on an entirely different life.
Yeah, it loses a bit of quality as well, with the way that the ink seeps into the paper. So, which is, again, why you've got to have a really good, high-quality photographer who knows what it takes to produce imagery for print, because there's a lot of guys out there, who, take up photography as a hobby, and there's some very good photographers out there that produce really great digital content, but putting it in print is a different discipline. Absolutely.
As anyone who's ever shot fashion for anyone would know, that the demands on print photography for print are absolutely 10 times anything for digital. Just really, it's really hard to get an image to look. There's a whole discipline around that we're not. This is not a printing podcast, but there's a whole discipline around color management that's just not. You don't have to care about in a thing. So the effort that's gone in to make these look as good as they do is it's obviously there. I'd encourage anybody listening to this to go out and pick up a copy of Redline Magazine and then re-listen to this podcast segment while we're talking about what it's like, and you'll just see what I mean. It sort of leaps out of the pages at you. Although, having said that, for anybody who's a Supercar Owner member, you don't have to run out to the shops and buy, unless you want issue 15. But from 1st of September, things are changing, right?
Yeah, so from 1st of September, there's going to be some adjustments to the STUK full membership package. That will include a number of things, but the primary thing we are changing is every full member will automatically receive an annual subscription to the Redline Magazine direct to their door. That will be a quarterly,
full magazine.
4 magazines a year. Like I say, included as part of their membership automatically. For light members, there will also be a 10% discount code available via your My Account area. So you can also pick up a copy of Redline. And again, you can do all of that with the discount on top, and then, straight to your door 4 times a year. Oh. And we're delighted to be involved and encourage as many STUK members as possible to get their hands on a copy, whether that's through your full membership or just buying a subscription, not only for the quality of the content that's in there, but also that each edition there's likely going to be some content on STUK members or their cars or something associated with STUK that may feel a bit closer to home in that sense. So, I would definitely recommend getting on board and start reading.
Yeah, I think every issue we're going to put some STUK stuff in there. So
brilliant,
because you guys are doing plenty of stuff. So 4 magazines a year. There's definitely at least 4 things a year we can get involved in. And
absolutely. Yeah.
And again, this was part of the appeal, with you guys, why I picked up the phone in particular to you guys, because you're doing some really, really cool stuff at the moment. And it's like, well, we want to be involved in that as well. Because, our existing readers, we've always got to think as well, what content do we put in the magazine for our existing subscriber base?
Yeah.
And it's very much a case of, are these guys going to enjoy this? Of course, they're going to enjoy reading about tours, car events, things like that, So, even though I haven't been to one of your events yet, it's very clear that you set things up in a really professional way and, you know what you're doing. So, that was another big reason why I thought, right, if I can get these guys involved with what we're doing, it's going to be a win for our existing readers as well. So
get you on one of our tours.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yeah,
I'll be tapping up a supercar manufacturer saying
a press car on the.
Yeah. I'm going on a tour with these guys. You're going to hook me up. So
it's for work.
Yeah,
it's always work.
McLaren 750S. There's got to be press cars for that coming out any time now, because they're done with the Artura press cycle, surely. So
Artura's done recently. That's coming up in the next issue of the mag, the September edition. Little plug there. I spent 4 days with an Artura, really getting to know it, which is good. But yes, 750S. I was with my press contact at McLaren. I went and saw them at Festival of Speed, and I was talking about 750S, and I had a little look around the car because I had one there. And I'll be getting out in that quite soon and seeing what that's like. So,
looking forward to reading about that.
Officially jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody who's driven 720Ss, when that car first, when the 750S, the press release for that first came out, everybody was like, "Oh, it's just a facelifted 720S." But I've also driven 765 LT, and if you look at the spec sheet of 750S, it's actually probably a bit closer to 765 LT than it is 720S. And let me tell you, LT is an absolute animal of a car. So
it's got the LT gearing in the 750S.
Yeah,
I think things like that. So it's going to be properly quick.
Yeah, it's going to be savagely quick. Yeah.
What that does to 765 LT values, I'm not sure. Like, will it be so close as to be no different? I don't know. We'll find out, won't we?
Yeah,
I'm excited
I'll
to
let
find
you know.
out.
I'll let you know. Yeah.
I'll read about it, and then I'll pop down and twist the arm of my local McLaren dealer and get out in one. I'm sure that they're not cheap, but they're cheap for what you get, I think. I mean, you can say, but no 300 grand car is cheap, I suppose. But maybe if you're Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg, it's just the money doesn't matter.
We would take out a wedge of car finance.
Yeah, well, that's the way everyone does it these days.
Don't tell the missus, just get a load of, sell one of the children off and just get them a car.
I don't think I've ever told the story. I definitely haven't told the story on the podcast of how...
You're just giving tips on how to get car finance. Do not tell your spouse.
Well...
Love, why's $3,000 of our money come out of the joint account this month? Well... About that, why has it gone to McLaren Automotive?
They make baby shares.
Yeah.
So
I've invested in the company.
So I'm gonna here we go. I've posted about this on Piston Heads, but I'm gonna talk about it on this podcast for the first time. My partner, she didn't know that I bought a McLaren until it arrived, until she got home from work, and I said I bought you a candle because I got a Joe Malone candle free from McLaren as a gift as part of buying the car. I got a bottle of Prosecco from Alfa Romeo and some flowers when I bought it, but McLaren gave me a Joe Malone candle. So I said, look, I bought you this candle. And she was like, that's, their Joe Malone candles are quite expensive. And I was like, but it came with a free car. And she was like, what? So took her into the garage. She just couldn't believe it. And that was the day that we
divorced,
completed on our new house. So I bought a McLaren and a house in the same day, effectively. And she hit the roof, but eventually calmed down. So I do not recommend to anybody just buying a supercar without any sort of input or conversation or whatever. With
you still own the house,
significant
car right now.
Yeah, the car is gone. That's another podcast exclusive thing. It's making room for another incoming
Joe Malone candle.
Incoming Joe Malone. I don't know. We'll see what this new manufacturer does as gifts when you get a car. I don't know when that's going to be. The world's sort of a bit upside down at the moment. But we'll see. It might have more cylinders than the McLaren did. We'll say that. So watch this space. But
I'm immediately thinking Lamborghini.
Well,
but 10 or 12 cylinders. It could be a Ferrari.
Who knows? Not me. I open up Auto Trader probably 3 times a day and decide to buy another car, and then change my mind. So each time, I don't know. I'll land somewhere very soon, hopefully. But yeah. Just speaking about the price things, I've just noticed the cover, the RRP for this magazine is $6.95. That is, to me, unbelievably cheap for a magazine. I'm sure that competitor magazines are way more than that, or maybe car magazines at sort of peak magazine got to be 10, 12 quid an episode, and that was monthly.
Yeah.
So, and they weren't as good as this. So that's crazy cheap to me. Up your prices immediately and buy a 750S.
Yeah. Well, pricing's a really difficult one because I go with what I feel is right, but also I take advice from my distributor as well. And the distributor always wants you to put the cover price up. But I think for me, I wanted to... This was my thought process. You can go out and you can buy Top Gear for £5.50, £6, either the same car magazine, the same, and they're your kind of typical newsstand motoring publication. They're the guys with the biggest reputations, and I still think that's a really cheap price point for a car mag like that, but it's kind of, I think, the standard now. There are other motoring magazines out there which are more expensive, but there are some that are higher quality as well. You look at Magneto or the Road Rat, you can pay upwards of a tenner for a magazine, and they're better quality than that. The magazine's thicker, the paperweights are a little bit thicker as well. And it's just, that's a place where I'd like to take Redline one day at some point, because we're still a growing business and we're still always trying to look at ways in which we can up the quality. But we're not quite in that bracket at the moment. And I just wanted the price to be approachable for people. And I wanted to set it at a place where also at the same time I didn't have to want to keep putting it up. Like I could have put it up for £5.50, £6.
Yeah.
But the price of everything's going up at the moment. Every commodity that you buy is more expensive. But the nice thing about us is that, every time we publish again, people can go back into the shop, into WH Smith or whether they're getting it from our website, and Redline still is $6.95. And I think that's a nice place to be. And I think once we do up the quality again, which we may or may not do a little bit for the next issue, but still, we're not going to be putting the prices up drastically anytime soon. But one day it might be a £10 mag,
Right. Yeah.
But I just thought that was a sensible price point for the moment.
I'm just going to say, go out, if you're listening to this, if you're not an SCUK member, just become an SCUK member. If you don't have, a sports or supercar, then just go and buy a Redline magazine and see if you agree with me. I think this feels like a lot higher quality product than the price tag would imply. That's my impression right here. And I know we're partnering, etc. So you might view that as an unbiased thing or a biased thing, but honestly, it's my unbiased opinion of just picking this magazine up for the first time today, and this feels like a lot better quality than the price would imply. So
I appreciate that.
Go and pick up a copy, and I'm stealing this, by the way. I'm gonna read this evening while I'm waiting for.
So when the price does eventually go up, the SC UK members can blame you for that one. Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine. If you can afford a Lamborghini, you can afford Redline Magazine. There we go.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
So in terms of the cars that you've tested to date, and I know that it's probably taken a while to nurture your relationship with the different car manufacturers to give you test cars, what was the car, the pinch yourself car that you were like, you can't believe that you actually got given the chance to test it and it arrived and the experience was everything that you wanted it to be? Is there any standout cars along those lines?
There's a lot of them. I mean, I've been doing this for a few years now, and I've driven quite a lot of supercars and high performance vehicles, and to say the novelty wears is not true. You do become a bit desensitized to it sometimes.
I completely agree with that.
Like every single time I get something special on test and I spend 4 or 5 days with it, or in some cases even a week, I always have that moment where I'm driving along and I go, this is really cool. This is really, really cool, even though I've been doing it for a little while now. And I hope that never goes away, because I think, even though I worked really hard with the business to get it to a point where, we could be trusted with these sorts of cars, and we did have the right readers and audience to sort of make sure that we're getting these cars on test. I never want to lose sight of that. But the main one that really sticks out for me was when we took our first supercar on test.
Yeah.
And the manufacturer relationships, I sort of built them from the ground up. So, it was always a performance car magazine, and there was always something that had a performance element to it in the car. But we also started out by taking some sort of more normal everyday cars on test. And then one day, after some pestering, McLaren agreed to send me a 570S Spider. This was when it was in production at the time.
Yeah.
Nice. It's a good place to start.
Very good place to start. And so I had it for a weekend, and it was a Friday morning, and this thing turned up on the trailer, and I was so excited. I was like, wow, I'm getting a supercar on test. And this is going to sound really sappy, but the car sort of rolled off the trailer, and I'm sort of looking around it. I'm really like bubbling over with excitement. And I thought, right, I've got to get in it and drive it now. And I drove it down to the end of the driveway, and I just stopped, and I was quite emotionally overcome by the experience. Because for me, it was just like, it was a new height for the business.
Yeah.
And I sort of sat there for a minute and I was like, shit, this is really special. And then I got in it and I drove it down the road, and it completely tore my head off, because I'd never driven a car that quickly before. And it was just the best weekend ever,
Yeah.
And we went out and we went on shoot, and I went and I picked my friends up in it. And I think you've done all those things that you do when you go and you've got a supercar for any period of time for the first time in your life.
You put like 2,000 miles on it in a weekend then?
Yeah, no. It was 570. Actually, it was 570 miles. I'll never forget it. In a 570. Yes.
In a 570.
I didn't mean to do that. It just kind of happened. Monday to Friday. And I only sort of drove it around Essex, where I live, so I didn't go to the back and beyond with it. But it was, that was really special. And I think for as long as I live, I won't ever forget that time that bright red McLaren turned up on my driveway on an August afternoon. It was really, really special. So
how do you put a car like that into context when it's the first one to be kind of try and give an unbiased view of a car like that? Or did you just not even try? Did you just sort of...
it was a few years ago now. I think I just spoke about my experience with the car.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in a position now where I can hop into a car and I've immediately got something in the back of my mind as a reference point, So from a journalistic point of view, like, I've definitely progressed from that point. But when it's the first one, I think you just go with the flow, to be honest, and you try and just write something that sort of comes from a place of that comes from the heart, really. But also, I also wanted to be a motoring journalist as well, so I wanted to talk about the way the speed made me feel, the way the car drove and things like that. So I think I managed, I'm going to have to go and reread that review now, but I think I managed to sort of distill that into, 1,800 words or whatever it was at the time. But yeah, I think if I go back and read it now, I'll probably think I've now got like this reference point, reference point.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't review it like that again. But
Yeah, because obviously, I think if you're Chris Harris or whatever, you've driven everything on the planet, you can immediately say, oh, well, this is, as he's prone to do, this is terrible because it's a Spider. There's no Spider penalty with the McLaren, is there? So,
No.
But you got all the, you know what the F8 is like, you know what it would have been the 488 at the time, wouldn't it? 570 was in production. You've driven everything, so you can sort of say, well, compared to this, it's like this, this is better and that's better. Whereas, just trying to, I imagine it's quite challenging to pull just something out of thin air and make it maybe thin air's unfair, but against something that's not a fair comparison.
yeah,
A recent, so when the first car meet I went to when I got my McLaren, there was a guy there in a TTRS, and he asked me how much power my car had, and I told him it's 620 horsepower, and he was like, oh, I've got more power than that in my, he's obviously tuned TTRS. It's like, you're missing the point.
Yeah, completely.
Completely missing the point, to try and draw a comparison with a car that's, on paper, everything just as quick, etc., but it's not the same.
well, one's built to be a driver's car and the other one is built to be a sports car.
Well, yeah. So trying to convey that, so someone who's never driven a 570S or whatever, there's no frame of reference. Obviously, you've driven that. Trying to convey that is quite difficult. So I imagine, it's a skill to sort of pull that sort of stuff together. So.
Just to pull myself up on what I said there, because that was quite ignorant. A difference between a driver's car and a sports car. I know your listeners will pick me up on this. There's some great sports cars out there which are driver's cars. I think the difference between a sports car and a supercar is probably where I was going with that.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And McLaren's in particular. I think as a journalist I can't do favourites. I should always be unbiased, and I am. But as drivers' cars, I do think McLaren's are some of the very best cars on the planet.
Yeah, you can be unbiased, but you're still human. Humans have preferences.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that actually, because I used to own a 570S for 3 years, and previously had two R8s before that, a V8 and a V10. Fantastic car.
I love them, yeah.
But when I jumped into the McLaren, even though it's just rear-wheel drive, I can't put into proper words really how the driving experience is just totally different to any other car on the market.
Yeah.
And I must have had the car 6 months before I dare put it on any other setting other than standard and normal. So my question mark is that, you had the car for what, a weekend?
Yeah.
It's the first time you'd had, driving a car of that kind of magnitude. Did you get it into track mode?
Yeah, of course I did, yeah.
Wow. You got some balls.
Not mucking about. I mean, it helps that it was a dry weekend in August. I think if it was pissing with rain, I probably wouldn't have attempted it.
Yeah.
But I don't, not that I speed everywhere, but I've never had this kind of fear of speed or what's going to happen if the car does this. I think that's just, I don't know where that comes from. It just exists. Like I've loved cars ever since I was really little. There's a picture of me when I'm 2 years old and my parents bought me a little white Mercedes pedal car and I'd go up and down the street in it. Like that's, we're talking that kind of age. And I always wanted to drive, and I always wanted to drive fast cars, and and so that sense of, if I put it into track mode, is it going to spit me off the road? I kind of just didn't care. I just thought, well,
I am the same. So I had mine so I drove mine all the way home in sort of disbelief that I just bought this car, really. And
with a candle on the passenger seat.
With a candle in the passenger seat.
was it the disbelief or was it like what
the
wife going to say when I get home?
So I mean, the thing is, you buying a car, it's an exciting thing, and you get in, and you sort of, you don't have all the data, you don't know how you're going to feel about it and all the rest of it. So there's that kind of new relationship sort of bonding period, whenever you're trying to figure out where you are with this car and all the rest of it. And so I just left it in auto and drove it all the way home, And the first time I ever drove it properly, it was straight in track. There's no mucking around, just boom, straight to like what can this thing do? Where's the edges? What's the, not turning traction control off and not going stupid, but just finding where, what it feels like, what's it like to in all the different modes. You just got to get out there and do it. And probably just as you have that sort of, I don't know, trepidation or whatever around it, and probably don't understand or view it as having balls to do it. I don't understand the other way around. And to your point, it's just like, yeah, let's just go for it and find out. You just gotta put yourself out there sometimes. And
So when your Artura arrives,
Yeah.
boom,
out the dealership, track mode,
Track.
I'll come with you to pick it up.
not even trap. You need it in qualifying mode for maximum battery deployment.
Artura is really docile. Like, that's a really easy car to drive.
Yeah.
And to like, it's stupidly fast, like in a straight line. But to like extract the performance from it's probably easier than it should be. And this goes back to, another one of the reasons why McLarens are great. I don't know how they do it. I don't know if it's some kind of witchcraft that they got going on in Woking, but how they get that much power purely through the rear wheels with that much traction is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because in all but wet conditions, even a 720S, in the dry, it just offers up so much mechanical grip. Very rarely, and I've driven a lot of 720. It's probably, other than R8s, I've spent a lot of time in R8s, but other than that, probably I've spent more time in 720Ss than I have any other supercar. And in all but, in dry conditions, very few times has one of them actually caught me off guard. Like, there's just so much trust that you have in that car. So yeah, and the Artura even more so. It just, you can, bully that thing a little bit, and it won't go spitting you off the road. It's quite nice.
I haven't got one in order, by the way.
Okay,
So-
but by the sounds of
I
it,
will have
it's
one.
not.
I have bought the
comes out.
registration plate already. I have the reg, just waiting for
Yeah.
waiting for the moment.
Wait for the moment.
It doesn't sound to me like it's a challenging enough car for your next car. So
thank you.
we'll go 750. 750S deal.
P1 GTR. There we go. Heard it here first. Incoming Euro Millions win for Sean.
Yeah.
Working on
P1 GTR immediately on order.
Yeah.
Get on to Lanzante and get one crafted for you.
Get it done.
So I think we'll call this episode good here.
Yep.
Just want to end by saying thanks for listening. Thank you to the motorist.
got the-
Something you want to add?
Closing tradition of the question. Sorry if I'm jumping ahead. But don't forget that one,
You've reminded me. I had forgotten. So we close out all of these segments we do with guests on the podcast with them asking a question to the audience for them to argue about it in the comments. So,
Well, I've got a question that hopefully will get them bickering between themselves, because it's had me and a couple of my colleagues bickering amongst us before. And it sort of came to me when I was driving up here earlier on in that long 4-hour journey that you've made me do all the way from Essex.
I apologise, but we appreciate the dedication.
It's a 5-hour drive, but he's done it in 4 hours. So
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
But no, it's been good. Thanks for having me, and it's been great fun being on the podcast. So I appreciate it, lads. It's good. But we've all seen it on the motorway. You've got people that sit in the outside lane, and then people that sit in the inside lane. And as we all know, they're not really fast or slow lanes. It's just lanes 1, 2, and 3. The middle's for overtaking. You use the middle lane to overtake the people. On the inside lane, you use the outside lane to overtake the people in the middle lane. But you should always be in lane 1, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
What's worse, people that sit in the outside lane, or people that sit constantly on the inside lane but they undertake?
Oh, that's a good question. Quite a difficult one.
until recently, that was sort of easy from a rules perspective, but they've changed the rules. So now they're both not right. So yeah, they're probably equally bad. But we'll let our listeners argue about that in the comments.
Are you going to have an opinion on that?
I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait and see which way this goes. Yeah.
One thing I would say is that when I went to America a few years ago, certainly in California, they have the rule to stay in your lane. And so you're allowed to, I believe you're allowed to undertake and overtake. But
there's no lane discipline whatsoever
No,
in America.
there's not.
That's
There's
the
not.
idea. It's just
I just thought there wasn't discipline in America, full stop.
Yeah.
But what I was surprised by was I was treating the lanes like I would in the UK. So I would switch lanes to what I perceived to be the fast lane to overtake and pull back in afterwards. I did that for maximum of 10 minutes before I got pulled over by the police for doing that, saying that the rule was to stay in your lane. And they were unhappy about like he referred to it as swerving between lanes, and I just referred to it as normal UK driving.
Overtaking.
Yeah. So I certainly think that the lane changing etiquette that we've got here is better than the alternative.
I never knew that about the States, by the way.
No, neither did I.
I believe. I think it might be. It might vary between states, but I believe that is the case. And I didn't know until I got told off for.
I don't know if it's an offence to change lane. Otherwise, everyone would just get onto the highways and then never be able to move across. But there's absolutely no lane discipline. That is for sure. I've done about 10,000 miles in the US between a Corvette and some other muscle cars, and I think maybe having a muscle car, like if you're in I think it did about 5,000-6,000 miles in a Challenger RT, and you people just get out of the way. You know, they see a something they perceive as a muscle car, be it as long as it's not a Mustang, because they're everywhere. If it's something that's kind of very obviously different to everything else, they just get out of the way. And it's not a dig at your Mustang, by the way.
Right.
They are like Mondeos over in America.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
You know,
I agree.
So this is what fuels the way why people want bigger, louder cars in the States. It's basically you just got to occupy more road space, and therefore people give it to you.
Yeah, I think 70% of the cars I saw were pickup trucks. Last time I was over there, you know, double axle F-150s or whatever. That's the massive. But they are all huge. So even something that's still quite big in UK terms, like a Challenger, feels like a small car over there.
So Mark, do you have a view on this? By the way, you posed a question, but are you going to?
Yeah, So, admittedly, I've gotten better as I've gotten a little bit older, but I used to always live for the fast lane, no matter what I was driving. But my lane discipline has improved with age. I'm 31, so take from that what you will. But if he listens to this, and I hope he does because he's on the team, but there is a member of staff who works on the mag, and he's one of those people that will sit in the inside lane and then moan that people in the middle lane are in the wrong lane, but undertake them anyway from the inside lane.
Sure.
Yeah, he tries to take the moral high ground on it. And this is where we bicker about it, because I'm just like, even if they are in the wrong lane, you're still supposed to pull in behind them and overtake them, not undertake them. So you're just as bad as they are.
I think there's a speed. Yeah, if you're in traffic, you're allowed to. Yeah. You know, you're keeping up with the flow of traffic. You don't need to.
But if everybody's doing 70 mile an hour, 65, 70
Yeah.
mile an hour. So that's why I'm like, I think people like that are worse than the ones that just sit in the outside lane. Because the people in the outside lane know they want to go faster than everybody else. Although my bugbear with that is that people who sit in the outside lane, but then don't, no matter how fast you're going, they don't get out of the way of the person behind them who wants to go quicker than them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if you're doing 100 mile an hour already. If somebody behind you wants to do 105, 110, you've got to move out of the way.
So if you've got a scenario where you've got someone hogging the middle lane, someone hogging the outside lane, and and clearly both of them are maybe going considerably slower than they should be going, and you're on the, let's say, slow lane, what would you do? Would you just wait in there and wait for them to kind of?
I'd sit behind them and flash my lights at them until I got out of my way.
Oh, you're a flasher.
No, I'm joking. Well, it depends to who.
So I'll tell you. So we've mentioned driver training a few times. I've been out.
I wouldn't do that, by the way. I'm just joking. I wouldn't flash people out of the way. Yeah.
So, friend.
I've been out with a police Class 1 driving instructor, and I've been in that exact situation.
Yeah.
And their advice was basically lane 1 and pass. So
Oh, really?
someone blocking lane 2, someone blocking lane 3. They were parallel, and they were doing well below the speed limit. And the advice, we sat behind them for 2-3 minutes, so it wasn't like an instant thing. So we weren't approaching that slow moving traffic, making driving plans to pass in lane 1.
Yeah.
We expected them to move out of the way.
Yeah.
We maintained the minimum sensible following distance for a period. It was a good 2-3 minutes, and it was clear that they were paying no attention to the road around them. They didn't know we were there. They had no intention of moving over. They weren't going faster than the car in lane 2. There was nothing coming up ahead of them or anything like that would have changed the situation. And so it was get over into lane 1 and pass. And that was the...
You know something? I think I can get that because I take an opinion really of that. If there's people that are on the road that are clearly not observing the rules of the road and also showing signs of that they're actually unaware of other people around them, then from a safety point of view, I'd rather those people be behind me than in front of me.
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
Yeah. So it's context driven, isn't it? I mean, if you're doing, crazy speed, well beyond the speed limit, and you're approaching someone and you they're not, and you just decide I'm going to move to lane 1 and pass them that way at, a massive speed differential, then that's
dangerous.
That is dangerous. They don't know you're there, and you're not able to plan, and you don't know what they're going to do and all the rest of it. So I think the answer, the sensible answer is probably it depends, isn't it? But you could definitely take a polar view one way or the other.
But I feel like if you were in that scenario and you got 2 people in the middle and the outside lane do the exact same speed and they're going too slowly and they're being a bit of a hazard, if you did go for the overtake or the undertake as it is, and the police saw you doing that, could they still be within their rights to pull you over and issue you? So it's like, one minute you got old Bill saying, well, we recommend to you that you do this, but then on the other hand, if you've got somebody that wants to be a twat,
there's a grey area in it.
It's like, what do you do?
Yeah, I think you just got to, Would you be pulled over if you've made an obviously sensible driving decision is the question. I mean, people get away with all sorts of stupid things and people get punished for things that are perfectly reasonable. So who knows?
I think there's potentially a debate coming on that one.
Oh, that's fully this.
See what the comments
see what I've ignited in the comments.
So
wait and find out.
Yeah, please do leave us a comment.
And we feel free to post videos. We'd love to see.
Anybody with dash cam footage of people doing stupid stuff. As long as none of our registrations are in it, please post
Redline
it.
Magazine feature of supercars undertaking people. Whatever. I don't know. So thanks very much for coming along.
Thanks for having me.
To the people listening, thanks for listening. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, please give us a share, social media, share whatever it is that your platform you're listening to this on. If you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a subscribe and a like, because that's what you say if you're on YouTube, right? That's the absolute rules to getting a YouTube video published, is you have to ask for a like and a subscribe. But in all seriousness, it just helps us to do more things more of the time, and get guests and things on that you want to get on the podcast.
Click on the link below. That's the other one you're supposed to say.
Oh yeah, click on. We haven't got anything in the link below. We'll put some stuff in the link below for you to click. Or something up there. I don't know. All the we need a big red arrow on the YouTube thumbnail and all the rest of it. We'll go full YouTube for this one, shall we? Just go nuts. But thanks for listening or watching. We'll catch you on the next one.
Just quickly on the subject of YouTube, can I just plug the Redline channel quickly? So we do actually have a YouTube channel. It's just at Redline Magazine.
We'll put a link to that
Redline
in the
Magazine,
description below.
that. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at Redline Magazine as well. So
excellent.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.